appreciate you guys all coming to hear us talk. And like Sarah said, we don't have all the answers, but we think it's important that we share our opinions. And Sarah and I, while we do live together and get along very well, have very different opinions. And so I think you'll see some contrast in what I think you can do and what Sarah thinks, and we overlap quite a bit as well. So we're just going to tell you a little bit about us, because I'm sure you're kind of wondering, other than Ruth's daughter and Sarah over here, who are we? So, Sarah, why don't you go ahead and tell them who you are? Why are you here?
Why am I here? So back in, when was that? When was the
It's February of last year.
Yeah, it was a year ago. It was a year ago.
A year ago, I spoke at the
Intersynodal.
Intersynodal. I'm sorry. About what it's like to be a young adult in the Moravian Church. And I think it was really eye-opening to a lot of people there. You know, I'm a member at home, but I'm now the music director at Macedonia. So I was the only young adult member at home, which is shocking to a lot of people because it's a very large church. But I was the only regular person in attendance there. And I think it was, you know, it was just important for me to share what that's been like for me. You know, I would go to a Sunday school where I was it was a bunch of retired people and me. And it was a great Sunday school class, but it wasn't, you know, I wouldn't hang out with them on another day. And what else did we do? We led a workshop that broke off from that.
To share about young adults.
Yes, and I'm also part of the community committee for Senate. I'm an elected delegate from home. The youngest in history. But so I'm leading that young adult group and discussion. And sidetrack, I think it was the coolest thing when we were at our pre-Senate event. At pre-Senate.
Oh, that was in September.
Yes.
That one. Okay.
It was a group of young adults that are able to come and represent their church, but they can't vote, and it's this whole thing. Anyway, so everyone broke off into different committees. None of us were on the same committee, and we all came back for lunch. And one person was like, "Oh, guys, I got put in charge of leading my group." And someone else was like, "No way, me too." And then we were all sitting there like, "Are we all?" Every single young adult that is there is leading a group, which I think is fascinating. And I think it's important because it shows how much the church wants to listen. Okay.
So I'm Jessy. I teach second grade at Southwest Elementary. I have always wanted to be a teacher. I've always felt like that was my calling. I went through Unity Moravian. We moved there when I was a year old. More than that? Whatever.
Jake was a year old.
Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But I've been there my whole life. I don't remember any other congregation. I was involved in youth group. We had Wednesday night Bible studies. And then I feel like when my group graduated, it kind of started to fall apart. I went off to college. All of my friends went off to college, and I was that young adult or that college student who did not want anything to do with it at that point. I was over it. I was probably a done person at that point. I just didn't feel like I got what I needed from my church. And then I moved home for my student teaching, and I realized that, you know, there was nothing else. You know, my friends were still at school and all this stuff, and so I started kind of every once in a while going with Mom and Grammy to church, and you know, people got very excited about it, and I was still kind of, you know, on the edge. And you know, while Sarah said she was there every Sunday, I'm that young adult who I go when I wake up and when I'm feeling well enough to go. I try to go more often, but I was that young adult that left and has now come back, and I'm here because I think it's important to share my side of it, because I feel like there are other young adults out there who are still kind of where I was a year and a half ago or so, when they were done, but they still were looking for more, and so I think it's important to hear from different perspectives on it and share different things. So I actually wrote for the BCM blog back in, I think it was like November, and it was something like things to do or keep in mind when dealing with young adults. And so Sarah and I are going to kind of go off of that blog post that I had and kind of talk about some things that we think are important to stop doing. And then that's the least amount of things. And then we have a lot of things to start doing and a lot more things to remember, to include and engage young adults. So first of all, we want to show you some of these things. We talk about what is that young adult, and we hear it's such a broad age range. And here I found 21 to 35, and we had a lot of discussions last night over this, and we were like, well, no, it's 18, and and so really for us, the young adult is that person who is, we're finding our way without our parents at this point, and we're trying to move out into the world and find our own, who we are, and that's anywhere between 21 to 35-ish. Other people may say, older, but that is kind of where when you look around, you're not seeing this age range as often. These statistics that I have here, I found over and over again. Mom even shared them with me yesterday too. And 2 in 10 Americans under the age of 30 believe that attending church is important and worthwhile. So that leaves 8 out of 10 that don't think that it's important or worthwhile. And then the 59% of the millennials who were raised in the church have dropped out and not come back. And then 35% of the millennials have that anti-church stance and believe that church does more harm than it does any good. And so we're going to talk a little bit to you about what are some things that you can do to maybe change the statistics. This is obviously in the whole, church, not just the Moravian church. So we're going to talk about what you can do in the Moravian church. Do you want to start that? Do you want to start? Okay, I'll keep going. So these are actually things that came straight from my blog that I was talking about, and oftentimes people assume that Sarah and I want the same thing. Sarah and I both are, there's this blanket, okay, if we do this, all the young adults are going to come, and, somebody has mentioned doing something for us before, and Sarah's jumped on it and thought, that's a really great idea, and I'm over there like, yeah, okay, you go do that. I'm going to go, do something else. So assuming that all young adults are the same and that there's one easy fix is a really big, misconception, for people. And then the other thing, and this one drives me insane, and I actually had someone in my church, when I started to become more involved and I started to come back, someone looked at me and they said, well, now that you're back, we're going to have you work on bringing your friends back. Talking about my friends that were in youth with me that left and are done. And asking me to bring my friends back, I think, is unfair to an extent, because I am not, we're not the same. I am not my friends. I didn't have the same college experiences, the same life experiences as they did. And it's not fair to just say, all right, well, it's your job now, because they're your friends, to bring people back into church. There are lots of things. It's not just a young adults are going to fix it. It has to be a group effort, and you have to work together and not just say, okay, well, if Jessy can get here, then she can bring someone with her, or she can have friends and her friends will come. And, I'll be honest with you, a lot of my friends have no interest in church, and we don't even talk about it. They know I go when I go, and they'll say, did you have, was it good? Great. And that's this extent of it. And then the other piece too is, don't freak out when we don't come every Sunday. I mean, I'm busy. I teach all week, and sometimes the last thing I want to do is get up and go to church. Sometimes I just want to lay in bed or work on lesson plans. And, Sarah has like 4 jobs. So sometimes, granted, one of those jobs requires her to be in church on Sunday. But we are working. I mean, millennials as a whole we are working, and we are, we're trying to pay off our student loans, and and we're doing all these things. So if we don't come every single Sunday, don't freak out and say, oh my gosh, are you coming back? Where are you? I think the neatest thing that I had was when I would go and then be off for a couple of Sundays, people would just reach out and just say, hey, I missed you. It wasn't we want you to come back. It was, we missed your presence. We could tell that we remembered you weren't there. And that to me was better than, where were you? Why weren't you here? Kind of, the expectation. So, do you have anything else you want to speak to?
Yeah, let me tag on to that. So when I got my job at Macedonia, I was obviously no longer attending worship at home on Sundays. And, not everybody got the message that I wasn't going to be there. And then it just became very obvious, because I was in the choir, so I was up front, so everybody saw me every Sunday. And then all of a sudden I was gone. And not everyone knew. And I think that brought some urgency, because then they realized, oh no, there's no young adults. We had Sarah, now we have nothing. And I think that did freak them out. But caused them to reach out to more people. And there are now 4 young adults at Home Moravian Church. Which is, you know, the freak out can work a little bit, but use that to your advantage. Don't.
So how did those 4 come back?
None of them came back. None of
They're
them.
4 new ones.
4
These are
new
new ones.
people.
Okay.
They are not people who went to college and assume that once they are gone to college, they will never come back, and your feelings won't get hurt. Just assume they're not coming back, and work off of that.
So
And when they come back, you're surprised.
Yes.
So they just randomly came to home?
They just came and visited, and everyone was welcoming, and they enjoyed their experience, and they decided to continue to come back.
You forgot one.
What?
People gushing over you because you showed up.
Oh yeah, yeah. So when I did start going back, I was actually living with my granny at the time, which is why she knows about a lot of this. But I went to church, and everybody was like, "We are so happy you're here." You know, they thought it was just that once, you know. And then the next week I went again, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, you're back again!" And I was like, "Okay, like you guys have known me since I was 5, like, yeah, you know." And it was like I was and that kind of turned me off for a minute. So it's like you have to find that balance of being excited that they're there, but also not like I almost felt uncomfortable because I was like, "Oh, they." It was almost like I was like, they are like talking about the fact that I'm not there, or they're talking, you know, like it kind of created this awkward situation. And eventually, like, you know, I came back the 3rd week in a row, and they were like, okay, whatever, she's coming back. But you know, I think it's important when you have young adults who are involved and who may not come all the time, not to like rush them and just be in their face all the time, but just. You know, and we're going to talk more about
They can
this,
smell
but like,
your desperation.
Yeah.
yeah. But it's, I mean,
Millennials
really
have a
just
really
like,
good-
you know, like
Yeah.
talking to them, like we said this so many times, like we're like normal humans, like we are adults.
We're not mythical
we
creatures.
like, you know, and I feel like sometimes in the Moravian church, especially, it's like I'm the only young adult without children in my church. There are some people who fall into that young adult with children, but I'm the only one that has, you know, I'm, you know, not married or don't have children, any of that. And so trying to balance, like, how are you going to receive them when they come is a really important thing as well to do. And so that'll lead into what are things you can do that will bring in the young adults. And I found a really good article while I was looking for some things, and you guys can look it up if you want to, but it was what are 12 reasons why millennials are over church. And it's by Recklessly Alive, I think is the name of the website. And it had some really, like I was reading, I was like, yes, like this is it. And this first one really came from him, and his first point was, no one is listening to us. You know, they say, what can we do? And then they just kind of, or they don't say anything at all. They just let you keep coming, and they assume that, you know, you're fine if you're going to keep coming back. And it's, you know, sometimes we feel like no one really cares what we think or what we have to say. And one of the guys in this blog, his solution was create an outlet to be able to discover what they want inside and outside of church, or what they need even, more so than that. And it's not just, what can I do to get you into church? It's what is going on in your classroom? Or, I mean, when I started teaching, my church really embraced me, and they said, you know, what can we do for your classroom? Can we come read to your kids? Like, you know, they kind of took an interest in those things that I needed outside of church. And then, of course, it dwindled off. But if you have an outlet or some kind of, you know, get-together of, hey, we're going to get together and have dinner, and then just talk with them about what their, like, needs are. Like, do you need to come to church every Sunday? What does that look like? And actually listen to it. And don't just listen and go, uh-huh. Cool, we can do that, and then nothing.
Drop it.
Because I feel like my frustration is, this is now the 3rd time I've been speaking, and I don't think I've really spoken to the people in this room, but I've been speaking about this for over a year, and people are like, what can we do? And I will say, this is what you can do. And they're like, oh yeah, we can do that, and then nothing happens. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's really important that you have those outlets already in place. that when a young adult walks in the door, you can say, hey, fill out this survey for us, or, can we just ask you a couple questions, or, just have it already there so you don't have to scramble when they walk in the door. And then the second point is start having conversations that may be difficult or uncomfortable, because I said this in my intersidental thing, the certain things that people think are important, my age kids and people, we don't think they're important. And that's hard. Like, that's a hard thing for people to talk about. And with everything going on in the world, like, there are conversations that are going to be difficult, but the young adults, like, we are ready to have those conversations. We're ready to hear what you have to think, or hear what you think, but also share what our ideas are and what our opinions are. And so, while it may be uncomfortable, sometimes we have to step outside of our comfort zone to really, like, and it goes for us too. Like, we are having to, like, Sarah and I especially, as, like, very rare, like, we're having to get outside of our comfort zone and say, hey, this is what we want, and, we don't always like to confront things or speak up or, that kind of stuff. So it really has to be a conversation that you may not want to have.
Like what? Give an example, please.
Well, I mean, I think
It's widespread,
it can be lots of different things. I mean,
it can be anything from, our, like, racial issues or politics or even, down to, like, doilies. Like,
like
what people wear for
yeah,
love feasts. Yeah. These are not, these non-essentials are.
But they're conversations that,
non-essentials.
but they're, in my church, like, I've kind of been in talks of, like, changing the time of worship, and people don't want to talk about it. And it's like, that, that's just one thing, but I'm like, I'm ready to talk about this with you, and I'm ready to have this conversation, and people are like, nope, we're not going to even, like, talk to you about that, because it's outside of their comfort zone. So, yes, it could be a, political whatever on this topic, but it's also things within the church that, like, you may not want to talk about because it's always been done this way. And, that got said to me in one of my first, like, CE meetings last year, and they were like, well, we've always done it that way. And I went, okay, that's fine. Wait till I am in charge.
Which you now are.
Which I now am. Which leads me to my next point, is get out of our way sometimes to give us these leadership roles. And I don't mean that in a mean way of, like, move, but, like, if you've been in a position for years and years and years, and you have someone who is interested in it, train them to take over. Don't, and I am aware that, like, I can be, like, and in your face about stuff because I want it to be a certain way because I think it would be helpful, whatever, but, like, if you can sit down and, have a conversation and say, look, we've always done it this way, I understand it should be different, I'm going to help you maybe slowly get there instead of, like, ease into it, and, and the other piece of this, too, is if you put a young adult, into a leadership role like the CE committee or on the board or whatever, in charge of something, don't just say, okay, here you go, and leave them there. I'm running into a little bit with me, I'm like, the person who did it before me just, she was retired and had all this time and could do all this stuff, and she did a lot of it that people didn't see. And so now I'm here and I'm like, okay, can you help me do this? And people are like, no. I'm not gonna, and I'm frustrated because I'm trying to teach and raise money and do all these things and have a life and help my church and do, and so it's like if you're going to get out of their way and let them step into these positions, don't just say, here you go, fix it.
Don't just drop it on their lap and abandon them.
Like, give them that, and that can go back to, it can be a difficult conversation where, you can say, look, Jessy, we are not going to change worship time right now, but maybe in the future we can, those kinds of things, and, I don't know, but I just, it really is like, and this is other piece too, Sarah has been a deaner at Home Moravian for how long? How long have you been deaning?
I've been a deaner at Home Moravian Church since freshman year of high school.
So, since you were 15. Okay, and I've been deaning the same amount of time at Unity. I am now the head deaner at my church, along with another person. And when I told Sarah that, she laughed and she was like, I won't ever have that chance unless I'm, like, 50.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm
you
not
know,
allowed to serve downstairs.
Yeah. So, you know, it's those kind of like,
Because you can climb the stairs.
Right, that's it.
but it's like those kind of things where, you know, and it's not in all churches or this way or that way, but I mean, that's a, you know, and I know home is much bigger and home is home Moravian, but like, so, I mean, at some point they're not going to be able to do it anymore. And Sarah has no clue how to, like, I mean, she can figure it out, obviously, but like, she doesn't know the little teeny tiny details unless someone tells her. And at the rate, like, some of the churches are going, they're not going to have anyone to carry out those traditions. And traditions are so important to the Moravian Church, and they're one of the reasons I love the Moravian Church. But, like, if we want these traditions to continue, they may have to shift and change and look a little different, but still carry the same, like, the principle of this is the tradition, it just looks a little different now because our world is different. And, you know, and it's important to just remember that, like, if you say we're the future, then let us, like,
Let us be the now as well.
Yeah, and, like, I mean, you don't just say, okay, go be a teacher. You train them for 4 years and whatever, and then they go be a teacher. You know, you can't just say, here you go, be this, or here you go, do that, you know. And you can still be the leader, and you can still do it. Let them help you, like, let them be a part of that thing.
And I would also add, don't expect us to do everything at the church.
Amen.
Well, that's like what I'm running into with the C committee is people are like, oh, well, you're just going to do it, right? I don't have time to do it. You know, and then...
Hang on, wait. Let me
No,
turn on to
go
that.
ahead.
Because, you know, I am at Macedonia every Sunday now, but I still travel to home on Sunday after Macedonia because I'm still a youth group leader at home, and I'm still on the Christian Education Committee, and I'm trying to, you know, balance all of that
She doesn't
out.
know how to say no.
I don't. That's why I'm here today.
It's also really hard to tell Ruth now, so...
No one knows that that's true.
I would think it's important that you be on the main, and this is coming from a church that's small, but why wouldn't home showcase you, Dan? And nothing against home, it's other churches as well, and I realize I'm not lifelong Moravian. But I think it'd be great to showcase young adults down on the floor where you can be seen to encourage. I mean, that's my thinking. And like I said, I'm not dyed-in-the-wool Moravian, so
You
I
can
guess
talk to them
that's...
about it.
I understand the step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can make the stairs. They can get
they-
up.
Yeah.
I'm
That's
sorry.
what I was thinking for me. She can climb the
They
stairs
need
better
her
than I could.
They
But the
need her
baskets are bigger
upstairs.
downstairs.
Oh,
They're
no,
heavier.
my arms are strong.
Yeah, okay. The next point, I was in a seminar, and the guy was, you know, talking about working with different personality types and all this stuff, and he was, I had 3 different people come up to me. We were supposed to talk about what made us frustrated in the workplace, and 3 different people, not even realizing it, said, "Hi, nice to meet you. My name's blah blah blah. Most frustrating thing to me is these young people coming in thinking they can come and run this whole show." And I said, "Oh, I'm not one of those, but thank you. Nice talking to you." And so people were discussing that, and he said, the leader of this seminar said, "I found the secrets to talking to young adults. Would you guys like the answer?" And everybody's like, "Well, yeah, share." And it was, find out what they love and appreciate it. And it's so simple, and it's such a, it's what you would do in a normal conversation, you know, like, what do you like to do in your free time? Go ahead, tell me, what do you like to do in your free time?
Anything musical.
Anything musical. I was a music major. I work for the Moravian Music Foundation. What instrument do you play?
The trumpet.
The trumpet. Are you coming to Uni Brass Festival? It's this summer. It's in July. Okay, I'll put you on. I'll email you. But you engage with them. You know, when you're having a conversation, and it's more meaningful to young adults because it shows that you care and you're listening and you are aware. And if I said, "Oh, I read this really great book," I wouldn't say that. I don't read a lot of books. She reads a lot of books. She'd say, "I read this great book," and then if you said, "Oh wow, what's that book?" and then you went home and read it and came back to her the next week and said, "Jessy, I checked out that book you talked about," and had a conversation about it, that would blow my mind if someone did that. That's like, incredible, but you know.
Well, so
Instrument do you play?
I play the clarinet, the piano, and the guitar, and I sing.
I didn't have that.
You know
I
what?
play handbells.
I think that's true with every generation.
It is.
right.
That's what you do to have a conversation with any normal person.
Right.
But it's just a little bit more impressive to a young adult when you actually engage and respond.
Well, so my example for this, because my church has done a very good job of figuring out what I love and appreciating it, and especially investing in it, because I have felt from the time I was in college a very strong pull to go work in a school in Nepal that is run by 2 Moravian ministers in Nepal. And finally, last summer, I was able to make it work that I got to go. And it was not without the support of my church that I would have been able to go. And honestly, I will say that the amount of support and like just people in my church who either donated or said, hey, I'm praying for you, or oh, I've read your blog, or oh, I've been keeping up with all of this stuff, I realized they really do appreciate and know what makes me tick to an extent. And they still ask me like about Nepal, and and I'm going back again, and people have come up and said, what do you need this time? What can we give you this time? What supplies does the school need? And they came to hear me speak about it before I went. And they came and they heard me speak about it when I came back. And and they lived it with me, and they found out that this was what made Jessy excited, and this is why and this is something that built her up. And for me it was a more spiritual experience, and I got more from God in my month in Nepal than I have ever gotten in all of the years of church that I have gone into a church on a Sunday morning. And they realized that, and they supported that, and they really made me feel like they got me, and that they kind of and it doesn't necessarily have to be something like, oh, she wants to go on a mission trip. It can be, hey Sarah, I found this really cool thing about.
It could be, hey Sarah, what do you like to do in your free time? I like to hang out with my friends.
Go to the gym.
I like to go to the gym. Okay, but I like to hang out with my friends. A lot of people, I don't need a scheduled plan and somebody leading. Sometimes just sitting around having a conversation is good enough for me. So my home church realized how important that was to me, and women's circle groups are huge at home. They're it's a big deal. And I always said, oh, I'll never be in a circle group. They're all old people. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what happens over there. But we've had, these other women my age joining the church or visiting the church, and they realized there was enough women that we could put together a young adult women's circle. And what that meant was them contacting me, seeing what I would want, if that's something I would appreciate, if that's something I would want to attend, and then what we would want to do as a group. We don't have to do what every other group does. We don't have to, volunteer to pass out bulletins, because I can't do that every Sunday morning. But, they just realized that was important. So we're going to hang out in March at a woman's house who's volunteering her house for us to come over. We're going to drink wine, because we like to drink wine. We're doing normal, fun things just with a group of Christian women, bringing us all together.
Fellowship.
Yes, it's just fellowship time. And the church realized that importance, and they're making it happen. And they're doing something about it.
They're listening.
They're listening.
So here are things to remember. We are adults too. I know that one of the things at Unity, I've been there since I was a kid, and it was hard for people to see, when I got my job and all these things, they still kind of referred to me as that girl that sat up in front of the whole church and was 6 years old and flashed everybody during the children's sermon, because they couldn't quite see me as Jessy, who had graduated from college and has her own classroom, and has all of these, does the same things that they did, because they saw me grow up, and I think it's that just mentality of she was our little kid, she was our little one that was running around, and her brother ran around in his Buzz Lightyear outfit, and and seeing us as adults is, kind of like, whoa, you know. But I think that's a really important thing to remember is, you know, like the comments of, oh, well, the young adults this or that, or, you know, well, we're like you. I mean, we are paying bills. We are, you know, we have all of these responsibilities, and while we may not have children or a house or other things, we have other things just like you that we are responsible for and we are taking care of. So we're really not that much different than you. We just were born in a different year. You know, so, and that's the other piece too, is we're all in different stages. You know, I mean, Sarah and I obviously like live together, and we have a cat, and that is the
That's
closest
not
thing.
she has a cat.
She likes the cat.
I don't.
That is the closest thing to a child that she and I are gonna have for a while. But we have, you know, we have a group of friends, and, you know, Amy and her husband Aaron are a part of that group, and Jamie Dees and Zach Dees, they're a married couple, they're both married couples, and we hang out with them, and, you know, they're married, they don't have children, but we all still kind of, you know, different places, but we get, you know, we all hang out and get together and do different things. But then, you know, we've had friends who have had children who no longer come and hang out with us on Wednesday nights at trivia, or who, you know, so remembering that, like, just because we don't have a kid, or just because we're married or not married, we're still kind of all wanting the same things, or, you know, wanting this feeling of being included. We just may not, it just may not look the same. You know, just because we don't have a kid with a house and all of those things doesn't mean we're not an adult as well.
Need to offer different things.
And
for those
offering different
groups.
things for those groups, yes. And the other thing to remember is that we don't make money like our parents did when they were our age and out of college. They did not have as many student loans as many young adults have today. They didn't have those extra expenses and things, and, you know, things were just not as expensive. Yeah, cell phone bills and, you know, all of these things. And so Sarah can probably speak more to this, but I mean, expecting a young adult to come in and, you know, to say, you know, you need to give X number of dollars to your church, or this kind of and that kind of thing, and is something to remember is we may want to, but we can't. I mean, I live paycheck to paycheck, and I am fine, but I don't have, you know, $50 to give every whatever often or how often, just because I'm spending my money on other things, because it's, you know, I have student loans and I have a car payment, I have all these things, and I think Sarah can speak more to this in her experience, because she actually has a closer experience with this.
My turn. Well, so I am drowning in student debt, and it's just a joy. But, you know, I give what I can to the church, and right now I give my music, I give my talents, I give my time. And to me, that's what I can, you know, I can make donations, but it's not going to be what keeps the electricity going in the church, you know, it's going to be the little things. And I told this story at the Inner Signal event, that I was at church. This was at home. I was at church, and I overheard some women talking about young adults in the church, and they basically said, you know, we don't need to bring them in because they're lazy and they're irresponsible and they don't give enough money to the church. And, you know, I was like, next room over. They didn't realize I was there. And you know, you just can't expect us to support in that way at this time. As we
Pay off our student
pay off
loans.
and rise out from the other side 10 years from now, you know, we can make those bigger donations, but right now that's not what we can give. Personally, you know, there are some people who can do that, but that's not where I am, and that's not what I can give.
I have no debt.
You have no debt. You go, girl. YGG.
Sarah, can I interject this?
Yeah.
I feel like that sometimes young people's, or any people's, talents, God-given talents, and time are equally important as the financial side.
Because to those ladies, they give in their way, and
Yes.
she gives in her way.
God gives us all different gifts at different times
Yes.
in our life. Thank you.
So that's that. The next one is non-essentials are not essential to us. And this is where I think politics does come into play. And I am hesitant to even talk about it, but I mean, I'll be honest, whether or not someone is gay or whatever they may choose to do outside, I don't care. I don't care what color you are. I don't care where you came from. If you love God and you want to worship with me, I don't care. And I think that's really important to remember is and on Facebook, and I know Facebook is, but I have seen people who are Moravian on Facebook saying things, and I look at it and I go, wow, I don't want to sit next to you in church. And I know that makes me similar to them in certain ways, but to me, if you can't understand that a person is what they are, and you can't accept that, then you're not living in the way that I was brought up to live in the church, which is you treat others like as Jesus would. And to me, the Jesus I learned about didn't care about those things. He didn't care about and it's important for a lot of us young adults. It doesn't matter to us. We may have our thoughts and opinions on certain things, but that's not something that we want to hear. We don't want to see on Facebook someone I'm sitting next to in church talking about how, all of these things are good, or they, that if someone is gay, they should not be allowed to get married. And, it comes down to your opinions on it, and I understand that people have different opinions, and I try to be as respectful as possible, but to me, it's simple. In all things, love. That's it. For me, that's it. And it's frustrating as to kind of have to sit there and think, did you hear what I just heard? Are you hearing the same things I'm hearing from church? Because to me, that's not, it's, and I feel like sometimes people try and hide behind certain things and pick apart certain things, and obviously I'm not trying to get into a debate about it, but it's remembering that, we don't care about those things. And we don't care if you wear a doily or not. We don't care if, we don't care about what time church is, or if it's even on a Sunday morning. Those things that make us, the things that make us a church are not the building and the things. It's the people. And it's what you believe in. And so I think it's, and it's hard, and we have to work at it too, because we also, as young adults, have to understand that, people were all raised in different times, and different things were happening in the world, but it's a two-way street, and to just put something out there on the internet and expect it to not have any repercussions, it does. It has, there have been times I've read things and I'm like, I'm not going back to church. I'm just not. That's not church to me. And so, but I'm just speaking from my opinion at this point. That is experiences that I have had with things that are non-essential about church. They're not about God. They're not about Jesus. It's really, truly about loving everybody for who they are and worshiping with them, regardless of where they came from. So that's what I have to say about that.
Thank you.
And then the next one is preferring experiences over things. And that's, the same. We would much rather, like Justin was saying, they have this influx of young adults. Because I would rather go to Nepal and experience God in the children that are in my classroom, and in Vani and Shanti, who are Moravian ministers, and raising a son, and going to being parents, and running a school, and, seeing God in those people, and experiencing God through that, than I would, sitting in a church, in a pew. Now, it's not to say I don't enjoy that. I wish I could raise my hand and ask questions, but that's something else entirely. I'm pretty sure Barry's terrified I'm going to do that one day in church.
Excuse me, Barry?
But we prefer to sit down and have a meal with people, regardless of who you are. I enjoy having conversations with, I don't want to say old people, because I don't think anybody is old. I think everybody's just at a different point in their life, and I don't care where you are in your life. I would rather sit down and have a conversation with you about your thoughts on, scripture or whatever, than I would sitting there listening to, whatever. We prefer to go on missions or go do things, and making those things available in your church, reaching out to your community, and truly, taking church out into the world, and not even saying, hey, we're from Unity Moravian. It's just say, hey, we're here to help. And if there were more opportunities like that, I feel like more young adults would be like, oh, you're going to go do that, and they're getting more from that than they would sitting in church on Sunday. Add anything?
I think it's interesting at Unity, it was the young adults that cleaned all the gravestones in our cemetery. They're rarely in church, but all of them were out to clean those stones. Sort of.
They're living out what they've been taught their whole life.
And then remember that we want to feel important and valued in our church, and I feel like Sarah and I both are in situations where we do feel that way. We have not felt that way at times, but it's important that all just remember that we're just like you, and we just want to feel like, not that we're overly wanted or you're desperate for us, but that, that you value our opinions and you are willing to listen to what we have to say. And it's not well, you didn't give, your $100 this week, so we're not going to listen to what you have to say. Or, oh, that's great, Jessy, I'm so glad you think we should do that, but we're not, even if you're not going to do it, at least hear me out. At least say, hey, well, then how could we do it? Or, engage, have those conversations again, like Sarah said. And then I think everything really goes back to with us is, most of us that were brought up in the Moravian church, we were taught in all things love. You love your neighbor, you love this person, you love all of these things. And that's just, I think it's something that's important to remember when you're talking with young adults is that, we are just the same, and everything that we're trying to do is because we are, doing something we love, or we're trying to find out that thing. So, anything to add about that? No? Okay. So Sarah, with her synod, you don't have to read all of this, but with her, you can. Her
If you can read it.
synod committee, she sent out an article about young adults and church and had asked for responses. And so these were just 3 that we thought really kind of spoke and summed up how we have been feeling too. Justin, you made it there.
You made it up on the wall. Well, it was not Justin's quote.
Will you read them out loud to us?
Yeah, read them, because I can't see
My
them.
thoughts are that many perceive that churches lack authenticity. Whether that is true or not, the idea of practice what you preach is disconnected, as churches seem to only look inward with their programs and beliefs. And then finally, I like Justin Robick's group, Moravian Church Without Walls. Constraining the church to 4 walls and a steeple and worship on Sunday morning is where you miss this large demographic. There are other ways to worship and to serve our Lord. Think outside the paradigm. And maybe this missing demographic will reemerge, maybe not in the pews, but in other ways, like cleaning the gravestones or whatever it may be. And then the next person said, the author's #1 reason as to why millennials are not attending church speaks the loudest. No one is listening to millennials. Most millennials are adults 18 and older, and they are tired of being treated as if they are still kids. The church must be willing to implement new ideas from newer generations. And the last one says, a part of the article that really resonated with me was the section on clickiness and the call to stop placing blame on individuals who struggle to get connected. I've seen church communities fall short on this a lot and have failed on this front as well. I have failed on this front as well, but an atmosphere of authentic, not transparently forced inclusion and acceptance, aka love, would be transformed in a way that appeals to all millennials, in my opinion. So these are just 3 different people who are not Sarah and I that are kind of feeling similarly to how we are.
We pulled from I had my synod group email young adults that they knew or contact young adults they knew, so I wasn't just like me and my group of friends, like this was a widespread response. And some of them were a little harsh, but we didn't include all of those. We didn't include dates of those. And it's just, these all kind of sum up what we've been talking about today. What's our time looking like? 1:55.
Do you guys have any questions for us about things that we've thrown at you?
I don't know if I can put it in. Well, I'm looking at that banner, that rug, that whatever it is. And
Patagonia.
I see Conneaut Hills over there, 1951, and Messiah, 1958.
Or passionate.
1951 also. And I'm thinking, those two congregations were started by young adults. Most of them coming back from the war, had all this passion and energy, and they probably didn't want to go to their parents' church. We're so close, we're close, we're 5 minutes from 5 other Moravian churches in Oak Hills. But they went off and started their own congregation. And I remember hearing years ago, it's easier to create a new school than change an old one. And I just wonder if there's a critical mass of people who are passionate about being Moravians, a critical mass that would be committed to starting a new community that may or may not become a congregation. And my guess is there's been thought and undercurrents about that. And I just wonder if those could come out.
Well,
on
let
the
me tell you
table.
about our idea. Whose idea was it originally?
It was Riddick Weber.
Was it Riddick?
Well,
Yeah.
the thing is that we don't have to worry about losing our young adults because we already have.
Yeah.
And we're not going to get them back.
Right.
No.
And we're going to be okay. We might die, but dying's part of life.
Right.
You know. So don't feel like, I don't feel like at Oak Hills we tie our future to young adults. We might tie our future to young adults who become older adults that are looking for something different than what they were as young adults. So it wouldn't hurt my feelings. In fact, I'd be excited about seeing a new congregation in Forsyth County that brought this kind of energy and passion and love for their church.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's definitely been talks about that. Within our friend group, we've talked about an intentional living community where we rented out a church, like chaplain or whatever that was, or parsonage that was like not used or whatever, and having young adults who are like-minded Moravian live together. Or another one that I think it was Riddick came up with was just take over a church. There are lots of churches that are willing and want those young adults to come in and almost just, rally together to come together, just to go into that church and say, hey, we want to be, we want to be included, we want to be involved. And I think a lot of time we fall short because we run into these roadblocks where people are like, no. Or, they don't want to listen to us, or they don't take us seriously, or they think because we don't do it every week that it's, it's just not worth it, or it's not going to happen. And, it may look different. I mean, honestly, I think of my group of, we go to trivia every Wednesday, like our group of friends, and
There's like 12 of us usually on average.
Right, yeah, and it's people who I've known I've known who they were, like Sarah, like, we actually met, like, I've known her since high school, but we met again through this trivia group, and we go every Wednesday night when we can, and to me, that is
It's
almost
our
like,
community, it's our fellowship.
that's my group, that's what my, I don't want to say my church, but I mean, while we may not be worshiping, we're still all together, we're like-minded, we are, we can talk about things that we've been feeling, we can talk about what's going on in school or what's going on in the world, and like, to me, that's become like an every Wednesday thing, and, I think the things are there, like, they're happening, they just don't look like church. They don't look like we're meeting at this time on this day. It's, hey, we're all getting together tonight to go do this, or hey, let's go run this, or let's go do that, or
No one wants to do a 5K with me.
I said Goose and I
You
would
might walk
consider
it.
but I mean, and I think that's the big important thing is to get out of the mindset of it has to look like a church. It has to look like a gathering of people that are sitting and listening to someone speak or talking about the Bible or talking about whatever. It really truly doesn't need to be this is a set thing that's happening every time.
Jessy.
Yeah, kind of, I guess, two questions really fit together. One being, I think, maybe underlying this is what does success look like? And I don't know if we're thinking like, oh, attendance and giving is enough. For some, saying like, oh yeah, the young adults like physically being present on a Sunday morning is what success looks like, and is that right or not? And then the second question, this has been a lot of like, community, what can we do? Personally for me, I think individual relationships, mentors who took me out to lunch when I was in college and afterwards, and continued to do a lot of the things you say on the list, but the one-on-one, like, can you speak to that. I mean, as
Mhm.
opposed to just like community, or if we're thinking, how are we to change our whole church?
Yeah.
As individuals, what can we do?
Yeah.
Specifically building relationships.
To the mentor thing, I mean, I went to Moravian college, and, you know, I went to a place where I knew no one. I did not know a single person when I moved there. So I developed my friendships, I found my church, I found, you know, my people, and I had some older people in the congregation who would take us out to lunch, who would want to communicate with us, who would want to hear about what we were doing. And they just made it just a thing to do. Like, you know, we just expected it at a certain point that we just knew we were going to go out to lunch and we were going to go here and hang out with these people. And, I also have a woman at home who I work in, she's like a little boutique shop, and I work there on Saturdays. And, you know, she communicates with me, and that's how she can communicate with me and how she can help support me where I am right now, that she can catch up with me every Saturday and do things like that. So it's, you know, it doesn't have to be money involved. It could be, hey, I've gone on walks with a woman I go to church with. It can be anything, you know, just spending that quality time with them.
Again, finding out like what they
What they like to do, yeah.
and do that.
Your first question was,
I guess, what does success look?
Yeah.
And I guess that's as much as you as everyone. So like, oh, we want to bring them back. Or
Mhm.
things like, what is success? You know, is it just?
I think at this rate, success is them being there,
Mm.
and, you know,
Not necessarily being there on Sunday.
no,
just like being a part of your church.
Available.
And
Yes.
yeah, like that kind of
So
I'm sorry.
help me sort this out,
Mhm.
because sometimes I think I'm hearing contradictory stuff. You know, we're just like you, we're not like you,
Right.
you know, that
Mhm.
kind of thing. So I'm hearing you say, if we don't show up on a Sunday,
Mhm.
you know, or if we don't attend successively, don't worry about it. How can we create something that is consistently there for you, or how can we help you create something that's consistently there for you when you're not going to consistently participate? I mean, I guess there's a certain place where there's
Right.
if you have enough people,
right.
a large enough group, a small enough group will gather consistently, but
Well, I think to the first part of, you know, when I say we're just like you, I mean like I'm paying bills and I am like living, you know, I have a life that I am busy and doing lots of things in that way. Now, but we are different in the fact of worship looks different to us and church looks different to us.
An individual church looks
And
different to us.
individually even, church, you know, Sarah would much rather go and have a Moravian typical service, and I'm kind of like, I could take it or leave it. But I think creating if it was something where I was like passionate about it, or I knew that it was happening, and I was excited about it, I would consistently go. And I'm not excited and overly like, yeah, let's go to church on Sunday morning. But if it was if it was Tuesday night and everybody's gonna get together and they're gonna talk about whatever, or they're, you know, or if it even, and I've said this too before, it's like even if like after church we were gonna go out to lunch and talk about the sermon together, and I could not raise my hand in church, but I could sit there at you know and say, hey, what did you think about when he said this, or even with the pastor and say, what did you think about that? I would be much more excited to go to church because I wouldn't just have someone preaching at me. I would be able to have that conversation and make that connection and have that relationship. So I think it really comes down to who are your young adults and what do they want? What are they excited about? Let
me tell you about a time that Jessica was excited about church. Jessica got to play God in church one Sunday, and I have never heard her so excited to attend church, and she reported back on how her experience was to play God in church, and she was just so happy.
It was like a reader's theater for the what's it called?
Scripture, I think.
The scripture.
You know, and she enjoys doing things like that. I would have hated doing that. If you haven't picked up on it, she's the extrovert and I'm the introvert. But you know, it's just finding those niches and finding what they love and they'll get excited about it and they'll be there.
You'll
and they'll-
know, like
yeah.
you'll know when they're excited about it. You'll see it, and and it like the whole consistency thing is it goes back to sometimes we are too busy, but like if we're excited about it, we're gonna try and find time for it. Not to say that it's not important to go to church on Sunday morning or things like that, but it's just we're getting what you all may get from church on Sunday somewhere else or somewhere different, and creating that outlet for them is important. And does that answer your question?
So kind of meeting you where you are
Yeah.
and not
No.
creating something that you think
Right.
would be great.
Like, don't tell me, oh, we're gonna start this Sunday school, because I'm gonna tell you I'm not getting up on Sunday morning at 9:30 to be at church. but,
But on Wednesday
but
night,
if
will
you
you
say-
come
right.
to the
Yeah.
pub and have a corner table and we'll
or not
talk
even
that
at the,
out?
you don't even have
Something.
to take me to the, to Old Nick's or
Yeah.
wherever, but like, if you say, hey, we're gonna have Sunday school on Wednesday night, sure, I would be more, like, timing and, that kind of thing too, and.
You would say it conflicts with your trivia team obligation.
Yes.
I know.
Since
I
endorsed
know.
angels have to
Yes.
reign.
So Jessy
Yeah.
and Sarah,
Yes.
when people ask me, as they have done in the past, how do we attract these young people to our church? So say we've got our college kids and they're gone, we've lost them,
Yeah.
we're not forgetting about them, we're still sending them letters and we still, send them care packages and we love them, but we're trying to attract the the young people that may be in our community. How do we attract them? Do we throw in guitars? Do we have this at 11 o'clock? I mean, I try to tell people to be present in your community, and if they are there, they will come. But do you have any other
Well, I mean,
solutions?
it's the experiences. I mean, if you have a group that wants to go to like the homeless shelter and serve meals, you're gonna run into other young adults who are doing the same thing, and then they see, hey, this church is coming regularly to do this. Maybe I want to go check them out. I mean, just truly being present and not just going out and saying, hey, we're from Unity, you want to come back and hang out with us. Just be in, just be there, just do something, be present at community events, and and don't feel like don't fake it.
Don't
Yeah,
fake
I mean,
And
if you truly don't want them, then you shouldn't. It should, I mean, if you want them, it shouldn't feel like a,
shouldn't feel
hey,
forced.
come on. It's a, hey, what are you doing on Saturday, or can we come and help you with this, or can we go, do that kind of stuff. And I mean, you will find young adults like me who will say, hey, that church is not, they're not out here saying, hey, come to our church, but like, they've been here consistently helping this group of people. Like, maybe there's some people who are kind of like-minded and want to come in and, and then they want to come and find out what you're about.
So I understand y'all saying it's not, people should not put as much emphasis on seeing you there Sunday morning at Sunday school at 10 o'clock or 9:45 and then worship. But it's, maybe it's Sunday afternoon when the youth meets and you'll see, that's what we do. We see the crowd in the afternoons
Yes.
and not in the mornings. So.
Another thing that just came to my mind, I know that about what were we talking about? We were talking about different times and places to reach people, and I know that New Philadelphia, they have a pretty good young adult group going on there, but they have a group that will meet for Bible study, but that they can't necessarily meet every week, so they have someone that's designated to send out like a scripture for the week for them to reflect on, or just like little things like that to keep them connected throughout the week. If they can't be there in person every week, that's still keeping them in that mentality. Engaged.
I will say too that, in our experience at the provincial level, we invite young adults to do really specific things too. If we need them for a short-term project, typically we don't, it's not to say that they wouldn't, but a long-term service opportunity, like we want you to serve on a committee for the rest of your life, every month you're gonna, Millennials not all about that. You can jump in if you disagree, but I can approach and say, need your help with this event. here's what it involves.
Yeah.
You know, need you to do this, and this is why.
And they won't respond
And
to
they
emails.
rarely tell me
not
no. They rarely say no. But it does tend to be, and I think that's why you're having luck with the Board World Mission, because you're engaging them in a cause, so there's a greater purpose in the service. They're very service-minded, but it's also sort of a short term. It's like I can go, I'll be gone a week and a half, I'll feel good, feel like I'm doing something, and then I come back to my life, and then I can do it again next year if I want.
Yeah. I think the direct invitation piece too. I mean, how many of us would respond to a church flyer for something that's not Moravian, right? But we want to employ the same tactics, like, oh, hey, we gotta get the word out, you know, a community bulletin board, and people go, well, if you wouldn't respond to it, I mean, it's all gonna come down to direct invitation, which is exactly what you're saying. Like, I recognize these gifts in you, I think you'd be good for this, would you consider it?
That's important.
I think a lot of the, maybe from what I'm hearing, the resistance comes from the congregation when these new ideas come in and the congregation is saying, oh, you know, we have it here, we're doing this, they just need to join us.
Yeah.
Rather than being adaptable like we've been learning about and listening and being willing to have that flexible thing, alternative service or whatever going on.
Right.
You know,
Right.
we have the mindset, you know, well, they need to come in and learn how to do church.
Well, and Sheila,
seriously,
and what you're saying, the fact is that Zach, who's your pastor, is part of this Wednesday night trivia group, and really it's extending his ministry. Now those guys might not ever come to Macedonia.
I do every Sunday.
But you do. But Zach is building relationships and creating connections and sharing the love of Christ in the community in a way that is impactful for that group. I mean, so yeah, see, I think we underestimate. We think it's all gotta be around our building, when in fact,
of our older groups. I mean, that's how we were raised.
Sure,
and
yeah.
I'm not really knocking it, but we need to be opening up and listening to new ideas that we can.
What time is this Wednesday night thing? I'm thinking I want to become a millennial. It sounds fun. I'm not good at trivia.
You don't want to become a millennial.
No, I
We get a lot of crap.
Can I just hang out for a
Yeah.
while?
Trivia group.
Oh yeah, I've been. They let me come.
Yeah, 7:30 at Old Nick's.
Wednesday night.
In
Zinzendorf's Angels is our team name.
Top-notch trivia group.
If you ask for Zinzendorf's Angels at someone else in the bar, they're probably gonna roll their eyes at you because we went on a streak of winning like 6 weeks in a row, and like the seventh week we like kind of tried to lose because people were like really mad.
And I think didn't you say Old Nick's is puppy friendly?
It is puppy friendly.
Oh, yes. So, okay.
And it's
I'll be
owned by
there.
Moravians.
Well, there.
It is owned
Just
by
gets better and better.
Gosh.
So I guess my question is that, you know, you have the group of young adults that, you know, the young professionals that apartment living or cats and stuff like that. And then you have me and Reed that I've got 2 kids and, you know, he's got one going back to school and stuff like that. How do we operate? Because that is a big, large group. And so how do we operate? Because, you know, I can find relationships like with you guys and stuff, but then I also have like relationships with those that are parents as well. How do we
And
how
I'm
do we
not about
navigate
mommy
that?
groups.
You what?
I said, and I'm not about mommy groups.
And I'm not either. I mean, to say because, you know, the mommy group sometimes there's judgments and stuff like that, but it's also like with my church, they do a really good job. We have a young women's fellowship group that women's circle that meets on Saturdays, and what's really great about that group is that they teach us those Moravian traditions. So we've learned how to make love feast buns. We've learned, last week we did sugar cake, and all these great things to learn. We've learned how to make chicken pie so that we can continue on those traditions in the way that we can too. But, you know, the young adult group is so big, so how do we navigate like the different seasons of life?
I mean, it's not to say that we can't hang out with
Yeah.
you because you have a kid. It's not
Right.
like you're off outcast in your own new group.
Right.
We can still, you know, we still need similar things because we're still in the same spot, but, you know, you need different things than I need. So, like, you know, I don't.
Communication, though. I mean, it really comes down to that. Like, and that's like the group that I'm a part of for Synod is like marketing ourselves to each other, and really like the communication among the churches. Even it's like, hey, what are like. I mean, I want to learn how to make sugar cake.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
I think that's a great model to be mentored by.
It absolutely
But I
is.
mean,
And
That's the way you learn.
Yeah.
Right. And I think communicating, like, hey, if, like, I mean, as long as you're okay, but, like, saying, hey, like, young adults, any women who want to come, regardless of whether you're a member at our church or not, like, and, you know, I think that's another piece that, the communication and, like, really, like saying, like, hey, you know, what are you guys doing with this, or how are you doing this, is a really important aspect of, like, including young adults, is just even saying, like, hey, can you go talk to Jessy and see if, like, what's going on with her, like, you know,
I mean,
that kind of thing.
if everyone has a women's fellowship, like, if you just say, all aged women can come. Because anytime I heard women's fellowship, I was like, oh,
That was the way I was for a long time,
I'm
too.
not going to that. But if you just encourage the younger people to, you don't have to make something new for young adults. You can invite them to what you already are offering at your church, and just making sure that they receive that invitation and they feel welcome to be there.
Well, and if they have kids, I mean, like, you know, offer to watch their kids. Like, while, like, if you want them to participate in something, hey, can you watch my cute little baby for me? Like,
That is a huge
Yes, yes.
I mean, a young toddler.
you know,
Yeah.
it's, you know, that, like, fine, you know, if you want them to be included in it, like, make it
Set it up so that
available
they
for
can
them
be
too. You know, give them opportunities to be included, and offer childcare if they need it.
Yeah, I could comment on the success of that. As an adult as a adult leader of Bethania's youth group, you know, a lot of folks in the church have stepped up to help, like, when I bring Emmett to youth, and in that way, something simple like that. You may not think of that in the context of, you know, reaching out to the young adults, but it's helpful. Helps me do my job. It gives him, you know, his needs are met, the youth's needs are met, so everybody wins.
Yeah.
And at Raleigh Moravian, men learn how to make sugar cake too.
Oh. That's good.
Yeah, chicken pies, my husband was involved in that one too.
Well, thank you guys for coming. We hope that you learned something.
You have lots of answers.
Well, good. Glad you found answers.
Well done.
Thank you.